So what's good, TMG fam? It's your boy L, and I'm back with another reaction. How y'all feel? Welcome back to the channel. Salute. Now listen, a lot of us have been unplugged out of the Matrix, but there's still some people plugged into the Matrix, bro, and they don't know what's going on or have a clue. You know, why would they be hollowing out a mountain? What are they doing back there? What are the theories? What's happening? What's going on? What are they telling us they're doing? At the same time, they could be doing something else. So we're gonna check out some things that are caught on camera, and y'all tell me what you think may be going on.
The mountain we're talking about is called Nijugo, and it's located in the city of Hida. That's in Gifu Prefecture in Japan. Hida is a small city with a population of just under 25,000 people. The city's economy primarily relies on sake brewing and traditional Japanese candles, plus they make mitarashi, which are rice balls on a stick. And it was in this city that the Japanese decided to dig out a huge mountain and create an incredibly massive artificial cave inside it, the biggest of its kind. Humanity has never seen a project of this scale, a gigantic cave 2,000 feet underground. To carry out the project, 560 researchers from 101 institutions in 21 countries were needed, and $600 million. It all began with digging a tunnel to the center of the mountain. That makes sense. To make a cavity inside the mountain with a reservoir, you'd need to get in first. And also check out what's going on there. And so in 2020, with the help of a newly built 315-foot-long tunnel and a borehole 2,379 feet deep, extensive research was carried out to thoroughly study the state of the rock. Apparently, everyone was happy with the results, and the construction continued. Around the entrance to the tunnel, a yard was built, an electrical distribution system, as well as a water supply and drainage system. The digging of the access tunnel to the main underground cavity started in May 2021. It took approximately 9 months just to dig the main passage, which is 1.2 miles long. By June 2022, the tunnel had reached the center of the dome of the future tank. But the tunnel digging didn't end there. They still needed to create a bypass that would surround the main cave and be used for installing equipment and other work. The tunnel was dug, and then came the turn of the cave. Its construction began in November 2022. This was the key stage of the building process. Essentially, the whole project was started just for this cave. The dome section was dug out in the shape of a snail shell, and anchors were built into the ceiling to expand the space and ensure the stability of the rock. In the end, it's not just a room, it has a specific purpose. But we'll get to that later. Right now, while you're watching the video...
Now, I can't lie, bro. Excuse the conspiracy theorist in me right now, right? I look at this, bro, and I think about certain movies I've seen, all the way down to Godzilla, and how they had that thing in there and they were studying it and doing research on it, and it was making these impulse sounds and different things like that before it officially woke up and started wreaking havoc on the whole planet. Like, this reminds me so much of things like that, bro. We don't know what they could have housed down there, or what they could be working on, or what they could be doing. But in the end, it seems to always affect the people. We're the last to know, the first to be affected.
Construction's still ongoing, and the final diameter of the dome section is supposed to be 226 feet. The whole mountain is supported by over 600 anchors because the structure has to handle the pressure of a 2,000-foot mountain on top and keep a stable space. And if it all works out, it'll be the largest artificial underground cavity in the world. By the way, the original plan was to dig out space for a reservoir using explosives. Just imagine how skilled the demolition experts would need to be to pull off something like that. Blowing up something under a mountain with tunnels already dug around, and it could all collapse. But let's get back to our cave. In the end, the main underground chamber is basically a cylinder with a diameter of 226 feet and a height of 240 feet, and a dome-shaped support that's 69 feet high. Or to put it simply, it's just huge. It's planned that the excavation for the cylindrical part of the water tank will continue throughout 2024, and then the tank will need cladding. They have scheduled it for 2025. So, in total, 260,000 tons of water will be poured into the cylindrical tank, and as you might imagine, filling such a tank is a not-so-simple task. In 1996, when Japan completed the construction of the younger brother of this project, it took 2 months to fill a 55-ton tank, and here we have a volume 5,000 times bigger. But let's say modern technology will allow getting it done faster. However, after filling it up, it'll take several more months before the water is purified to the right state, because you can't just drink it, it needs to have a special quality. The shots you're seeing were filmed inside the little brother of the tank under construction, and it also holds ultra-pure water. The cleanest water on the planet with so few impurities turns caustic, because nobody spends millions of dollars just to excavate a huge pool inside a mountain and then, let tourists in? No, it's way more interesting, including the water. Give it enough time, such pure water can dissolve metal. Scientists discovered this when they dropped a hammer into the tank. I wonder whether this was done on purpose or someone just accidentally dropped it. Anyway, after years, they took out the hammer. Inside, it was hollow. Only the chrome-plated shell of the tool remained. And I also want to point out the mountain, because the construction site was chosen for a reason. When you're building something inside a mountain and you're not a dwarf from Duran's Line, there's always a risk of very serious problems, even with dome expansion. Because one mistake, a minor crack in safety, and that's it. Hundreds of people could be buried under the mountain with no chance to be rescued. And this mountain was chosen specifically for safety reasons. The reason is that it's known as hyper-kamiokande, one of the most solid rock formations in Japan. This rock type formed under immense pressure way back in ancient times and should be able to endure all the work done inside. Well, and there are also abundant supplies of fresh water nearby. So let's get back to the structure itself. I've already mentioned that it's gigantic.
Imagine what is hazard pay? What do y'all think they making to do that? The workers. Because even though they say it's the strongest rock ever, that's why they chose it, it's still like a possibility, a percent chance that there could be a collapse in there. Like, I'm mad. I want to know. I'm anxious to know what they're paying those workers, bro. It gotta be substantial. It gotta be a lot.
Gigantic, talked about its height, diameter, and all that, but I know from experience that it's hard to imagine such scales. So let's use some references. Our underground cylinder has a height of 240 feet. That's roughly the height of a 23-story building, which is a lot. For example, let's take Tokyo Dome, a massive structure, a covered stadium in Tokyo with an internal height of 184 feet. So if you put the dugout cylinder inside the stadium, it'll go through the ceiling. And besides the height, there's also the impressive width. The diameter of the cavity is 223 to 226 feet, which is like the width of a soccer field. Well, if we keep it really simple, the Statue of Liberty will fit comfortably inside our cylinder. But without the pedestal? With the pedestal, it would stick out by 66 feet. So the big question is, why did they do that in the first place? What exactly are they planning to study? And why did it require digging out the inside of a mountain? The answer lies in a word you might have heard: neutrino. Do you know what that is? Imagine an ancient particle zooming through space after a star explodes. This particle has been speeding through space for billions of years, coming from a massive supernova, 8 times bigger than our sun. The particle is called a neutrino, or little neutron in Italian, a very small one. Neutrinos are one of the most mysterious particles in nature, able to pass through objects as if they don't exist. Neutrinos are even called ghost particles because they barely interact with anything, yet they're the most common particles in the universe after light, so they're everywhere. But we know damn little about them. Approximately 100 trillion neutrinos every second pass through your body completely harmlessly. And mine too. And actually through all sorts of objects. A lot of neutrinos come to Earth from the sun and stars. Neutrinos are also produced when cosmic rays collide with Earth's atmosphere. Even bananas emit neutrinos. Also, neutrinos are incredibly small and don't interact with electromagnetic force. To put it in perspective, incredibly means they are smaller than atoms. However, in very, very rare instances, neutrinos can release charged particles when they hit matter on their path. When this happens, we observe a faint ring-like Cherenkov radiation. That is unusual glowing, but even with this radiation in mind, neutrinos are very hard to study. They're 100,000 times smaller than electrons, and so particles are incredibly difficult to detect even with the most modern equipment. Neutrinos were first discovered around 2000, and since then there's been a lot of effort to study them. But as we learn more questions keep popping up. It's obvious that they're key in particle physics, stellar physics, black holes, and the universe, but if we can really study neutrinos, scientists might also be able to investigate our own beginnings. This is precisely why the work is underway in the mountain. Hyper-kamiokande, which is the reason all this effort is made, will be the largest underground neutrino detector globally, and will look for proton decay. This will be a gigantic water-filled tank lined with sensors that'll catch flashes occurring when neutrinos collide with electrons or atomic nuclei in the water, especially pure water, remember? It's needed to increase the number of interactions between neutrinos and, with everything else. Protons, neutrons, electrons. I won't go into details, it's all pretty complicated and very scientific. But those light bulbs you see on the walls are actually photomultiplier tubes. And despite their appearance, they don't emit light but serve as eyes. Yes, it's a wall with an incredible number of eyes. Eerie. However, the job of the bulbs is to notice flashes of light that are invisible to the human eye. They are so sensitive that they can detect the light from a flashlight on the surface of the moon. In total, they plan to place 40,000 ultra-sensitive optical sensors there to, solve the mysteries of the universe. And bring Japan another Nobel Prize in physics in this field. Nothing too complicated. They plan to start collecting data in 2027. How about the little brother of the huge reservoir? Under the mountain in central Japan, there's already a similar experiment that cost $140 million. It used to be one of the largest zinc mines in Japan, and now it's one of the most successful scientific experiments. This, by the way, is a second-generation detector. The first one spurred rapid development in neutrino research worldwide. The second one revealed neutrino properties one after another. It's no wonder that a lot of hopes are pinned on the third detector. Science is advanced, scientists are using the experience from the first two devices, and the detector itself is bigger, meaning more water, more bulbs. Basically, it should be even better than before.
I think we need to do our own research, y'all. I don't feel good about this at all. I don't know enough about neutrinos to be able to be like, okay, I see what they're doing. I get what they're doing. They're doing this for that. This is harmless, won't affect us, and it'll help push us forward. I don't know enough about it, and I need to do my own research because to me, it just feels like they're not telling us everything that neutrinos can do, what they're known for, how it affects us. Like, what if they attract those things, store it, and it turns into, I don't know, it creates its own star or whatever it comes from and explodes from, or it's some kind of way you gather so many and storm and it creates a black hole or something here on our planet. Like I said, I don't know enough. I just have a bad feeling about that. I don't know why, but sometimes you gotta trust your gut. So I'm gonna definitely look into that. See, can I find some videos on that? And see, can we gather some more information on neutrinos?
Given that both previous experiments led to Nobel Prizes in physics, the expectations among scientists are high. By the way, why do they build all this stuff underground? First a mine, then a mountain. Can't they just find some field and put up a huge warehouse there? It's possible, but the research results will be very questionable. The Japanese place their detectors deep underground to minimize the interference coming from other particles. Besides neutrinos, there are other elementary particles, a total of 17. Most of these particles lose energy in the soil and stop, but neutrinos can pass through anything. That's why detectors are placed underground or in a mountain. This way, scientists will know for sure that the detected particles are neutrinos. But scraping out the inside of a mountain isn't the first construction marvel people have done to study these particles. Imagine, a neutrino travels 750 million light years and ends up buried underneath Antarctic ice. Why? Because Ice Cube is here. No, not the rapper. It's the Neutrino Observatory at the South Pole. It's a particle detector made from Antarctic ice. And why not use ice when there's plenty of it around? The detector is located not far from the Amundsen Scott Station, just buried deep underground, about 8,200 feet down. Of course, there's no need of using water here. We have ice here instead. Essentially, it's billions of tons of ice embedded with a grid of sensors. They light up when they detect a passing neutrino, and by looking at where they're located, scientists can determine the energy and direction of the neutrino that caused the burst. With this information, they can attempt to uncover the origins of neutrinos in the universe. This detector is also set for an upgrade, but that won't be completed until the 2030s. Detector versus earthquake. As already mentioned, one of the detectors is inside a mountain in Japan. one of the most seismically active countries. Each year, around 1,500 earthquakes occur in the country. Isn't there a risk that one of them might be strong enough to bring down everything that's been built up for so long? So one time an earthquake really damaged the equipment, broke 60% of the photo multiplier tubes in the old detector, and they had to pause the research for a while to fix it. But they promised to take this into account when building the new detector. Sunny Italia. Did you know that a similar detector was set up deep under a mountain in Italy? Smaller, of course. The device, called borexino, consists of a tank about 59 feet high, which contains 254 tons of scintillating liquid. And it was right here that, for the first time in the history of physics, rare, ghostly particles were discovered that are formed as a result of nuclear fusion inside the sun. These are also neutrinos, but special ones, solar ones. Such a discovery brings humanity one step closer to understanding the fiery nuclear reactions that power our home star. A snapshot from inside the sun. Our star keeps smashing atoms together deep inside to create its blazing light. But because this internal chaos is buried under thick outer layers of the sun, scientists have few ways to find out what's actually happening. But neutrinos can shoot straight out from the center of the sun. And it's with their help that researchers got one of the most detailed pictures of the sun's mysterious inner world ever made. By the way, they created this picture using borexino. The first map of the Milky Way.
See, now you got me thinking that this is just all about energy. The energy from the sun. We all always wanted to know more information about it. How do we absorb energy or use energy or extract that for power? Like, now that it's starting to make a little bit more sense of what they could potentially also be doing down there. Not saying what they're telling us isn't true, but there's always ulterior motives down there with things like that, bro. And like I said, the more they keep explaining and talking, the more information they give, the more they keep kind of showing their hand to me a little bit, I think.
Don't think that achievements belong only to borexino. Not long ago, scientists tracked the galactic origin of 60,000 neutrinos with IceCube and created the first ever portrait of the Milky Way. And it's a completely new image because all the pictures we got before were taken using visible light. In the case of neutrinos, it's a map made of matter. Hunting on the bottom. Neutrinos are everywhere, even in the largest freshwater lake in the world. It was there, in Lake Baikal, that Russian researchers submerged the world's biggest underwater detector. The spherical device, named Baikal Gigaton, is designed to detect and observe elusive neutrinos. But why this lake? It's simple. The location of the lake and the seasonal ice cover, which lasts for 2 months, make it a perfect place to detect neutrinos. In fact, Baikal is the only lake where you can place a neutrino detector because only here it's deep enough. Areas rich in water and ice like lakes and glaciers are the best places to detect neutrinos. Anyway, you already realized the more water the better. You owe me a like. See you later.
Now listen to this story now. Prepare yourself. It said McDonald's and big supermarkets failed to spot slavery.
Now, a BBC investigation's discovered that multiple signs of slavery were missed after 9 men were trafficked from the Czech Republic and forced to work at a UK McDonald's restaurant by a criminal gang. Other victims were enslaved and put to work at a factory supplying bread products to major food retailers. Baroness Theresa May, who introduced anti-slavery legislation, says the case raises shocking questions about how big companies address modern slavery. With more, here's John Ironmonger.
Rescuing slavery victims from a London house and a criminal operation lasting 7 years.
Got 2 in here. Just 1 in there.
It was terrible to wake up every morning, and I didn't want to wake up. I'd rather be dead.
Forced to live in an attic and an unheated, leaking out building, victims were found legitimate jobs by a criminal gang led by brothers Ernest and Stenyek Drevenok, who referred to them as livestock and stole hundreds of thousands of pounds from their wages to fund luxury lifestyles, new cars, gold jewellery and foreign holidays. 9 victims were sent to work at this Cambridgeshire McDonald's, where they clocked up to 100 hours a week.
The managers didn't question the long hours I did.
100 hours a week? Jeez. gosh, bro. How do you? I don't even know how do you even do that to somebody, bro?
They would even ask me, "Are you happy to stay longer?"
We've discovered that McDonald's and the franchisees running the branch missed multiple opportunities to detect the crime. Job applications were completed by gang members, victims' wages paid into bank accounts controlled by the gang, and victims worked extreme hours.
We use the term red flag to say this is an indicator that forced labour, modern slavery might be happening. And in my view, there were many red flags in this case which were missed.
In a statement, McDonald's told us they commissioned an independent review, and with their franchisees, who unknowingly employed the victims of slavery, have taken action to strengthen the ability of our people and systems to detect and deter potential risks, such as shared bank accounts, excessive working hours, and reviewing the use of interpreters in interviews.
I think it definitely should act as a wake-up call for all companies. Professional curiosity goes an awful long way when considering and looking out for modern slavery.
The victims were also forced by the criminal gang to work in a London factory, making and supplying own brand pita bread for 6 of the UK's biggest food retailers: Tesco, Sainsbury's, M&S, Waitrose, Co-op and Asda. None spotted the signs of slavery at the time the victims worked there. Sainsbury's says it stopped using the supplier in 2016 for unrelated reasons. M&S, Tesco and Waitrose all say they pulled out due to concerns about working practices. The Co-op says it carried out inspections but found no signs of slavery, while Asda says it was disappointed to learn of the historic case and would carry out a thorough review. It's almost 10 years since then Home Secretary Baroness Theresa May introduced the Modern Slavery Act.
I think the case has raised some shocking questions about the approach being taken by some big companies. They need to look at their supply chains, they need to look at their processes. Do we need to enhance the Modern Slavery Act? Yes, I think we do.
You are under arrest.
To hear that in 2024 is just, I want to say it's unbelievable. You don't expect that. But at the same time, it's like, I can see that happening. And I can see them not catching it, them not caring. It just goes to show you how, like, caring about your employees is just, I don't know, man. Nobody cares anymore, bro. Nobody cares. All they looking for is the top worker, the person putting in the most hours, going the hardest for their company, their bottom line, ultimately their pockets. That's it. Nobody cares about the employee anymore.
4. Conspiracy to commit the offence of holding another in slavery.
Ending years of misery for victims, in 2019 the gangmasters were arrested in the UK and the Czech Republic.
That was the best feeling I've ever had. I was so happy it was over.
While the criminal gang has been put on trial and put behind bars, their victims are still waiting for an apology from the companies who failed them. John Ironmonger, BBC News, Cambridge.
Lots in that report to discuss, and I'm joined now by James Clary, the CEO of Justice and Care. That's a charity which has supported several victims of modern slavery, and James has also attended some of the court cases mentioned in that investigation. Welcome to BBC News. As I say, there's plenty to unpick there. First of all, I'd like to ask you how widespread you think this is in the UK.
Thanks, Regini. We know that in the UK there are over 100,000 victims of modern slavery. It is everywhere. It's in every town, in every city across the UK, in businesses that we'll all be familiar with, in nail bars, in car washes. There's a growing problem in the adult care sector, and criminals are making a lot of money. It's big business and it's brutal.
So if it's hiding in plain sight, is enough being done? And if not, what needs to be done?
So the UK was one of the leading countries back in 2015 when it introduced the Modern Slavery Act. that put a burden on businesses in the UK over a certain size to publish a statement that they were tackling modern slavery. Unfortunately, in the last 10 years, very little more has been done, and we've gone backwards. Other countries are doing a lot more than the UK. So a lot more could be done. The police force are under-resourced. There are only a handful of specialist police forces around the UK who understand modern slavery. The Met Police and the Cambridgeshire Police who are working on this case did an outstanding job, but they don't have the resources to cover the size of this problem.
You talk about, well, it was mentioned in the report as well, but some of the signs that might indicate that modern slavery is going on. Just to remind our viewers of what some of those are, so that businesses and indeed individuals would be able to pick up on it if they thought that these signs were there.
Yes, yeah, of course. All of your viewers today can help fight this wicked crime by spotting signs and then reporting them to the police. So, for example, if you see an unusually large number of people living together, workers being collected and dropped off in one vehicle, a lack of protective equipment, or someone living on the site of work, that is almost certainly signs of slavery in the workplace. If you see different males visiting a property for a short time at all times of the day and night, victims showing signs of physical abuse and being under control, these can be signs of women being subjected to sexual exploitation. And if you're concerned that somebody rarely leaves home where they're working, they're being abused and not having many personal possessions, they're all signs of domestic servitude. So never be worried about making a mistake. The police will investigate your report. You're not wasting their time. They'd rather have 25 mistaken cases of exploitation rather than risk missing a victim of modern slavery. So please do call the police or report it to the Modern Slavery Helpline or Crime Stoppers.
And what more should businesses and companies who might be employing people who are enslaved unwittingly, unknowingly, what more should they be doing to make sure there are better checks, and how should they be held to account better?
Yeah, there are some companies doing really good things, but unfortunately we don't go far enough. And in this case, we saw McDonald's plus a number of supermarkets who weren't asking enough questions about what was happening in their supply chain. In the UK, you can be legally compliant even if you publish a statement to say that you've taken no steps to address modern slavery. We just don't go far enough. In the EU and around the world, there are lots of other regulations that require companies to complete full due diligence, and failure to do so would lead to a penalty of 5% of their global turnover. We do not have that in the UK, and so there isn't a level playing field at the moment, and companies are required to do one thing under one law and another under another. The UK could do a lot more, and my advice is, if you work in a business, there are some red flags that you could learn from in this case. The fact that we had workers in McDonald's who were working up to 100 hours a week, sometimes doing shifts of 30 hours, that their money was paid into the bank account of another person. In fact, 4 people's money was paid into one person's bank account. These are red flags that the managers at the McDonald's franchise should have picked up, and so we could be doing more.
OK, thank you so much, James Clary there from Justice and Care. And just to say that McDonald's UK said it had improved systems for spotting potential risks, and the British Retail Consortium has said more generally that its members would learn from the specific case that was mentioned in that report.